Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Talking God and Politics with Mark, Mike, and the eye candy of the show, my wife, Denise. How you doing, Mark?
Doing well. How are you folks doing?
Doing
Awesome.
good.
Awesome. Well, folks, we continue to go through the book, The Great Awakening by Alex Jones. We are in chapter 8. We're doing a review of the book. And after we do a review of the chapter, we kind of get into the topics of the day, what's going on in the news in the country, around the world, how they relate to scripture, the Constitution. We look at all kinds of things, monetary issues, foreign policy issues, even child trafficking, which is, we're going to touch on that a little bit later. We have a few clips we want you to look at. But before we do that, we're going to get into this chapter, Mark. Did you read the whole chapter?
I did.
Okay.
It was actually pretty long chapter, but it was good.
Yes.
I like Tucker Carlson, and some of the background he gave was really cool.
Yeah. So the overall point of the chapter, and it's titled basically Red Pilling Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan. Now, Alex Jones has been personal friends with both of these men for many years, probably a much longer friendship with Joe Rogan than Tucker. But that friendship has really blossomed, and Alex has really pressed the envelope and pressed these men graciously and generously over the years. And you see that they are two of the most influential social media platforms that we really have right now, and they are really producing some good content, exposing the globalist agenda. And Mark, he really gets into, when it comes to Tucker, kind of showing us some behind the scenes things that are taking place between Fox News, Tucker, what his contract is, what it's not, and really kind of some inside baseball as to how Tucker actually got fired and if he's actually better off now than he was or not. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it was surprising. I had when he was fired, I had a couple of I was like, it's got to be the whole January 6th thing. And then I was like, okay, maybe it was the vaccine thing because his second to last episode, he had Robert Kennedy Jr. on, and I was really kind of torn between, was it January 6th expose or was it that? And Alex in his book actually turns it in another direction, which I thought was very interesting. But yeah, it's really cool to see kind of because so the first time I remember Tucker Carlson, he was the bow tie guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
He showed up.
Crossfire.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, yes, but I had never watched that show. I was like, whatever. But when he showed up in 2008, he showed up to one of Ron Paul's rallies, and he kind of opened up that rally before Ron Paul came on. And I was like, oh, okay, this is Tucker Carlson. And it was funny in the book, he said that Tucker Carlson, he's gone from being the naive, bow-tied little libertarian of a decade ago to understanding it all and becoming a figure unlike any other in media.
True.
And that's what I remember of him. And then, of course, I watched him on Fox. Wasn't, when I could. My wife loved watching Fox. I haven't really been a Fox News guy, but it got to where, he was saying things that no one else was saying on a national media outlet. And I'm like, okay, I got to start listening to this guy.
I'd always talk to my wife and be like, why is Tucker eating around the edges? Why is he just not dealing with the root problems? Now, he was covering more than anyone else in mainstream. And you're right. I was wondering the same thing. Why did he get fired? And I had a few things. Like, he had started a series a month or two back on Let Them Eat Bugs, and he did this little documentary on Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. and the whole globalist agenda, the
Mhm.
transhumanism and the technocracy. And I was like, And I remember after he did that, I told my wife, I said, I think his days may be beginning to get numbered at this point. But that was probably, I don't know, maybe a few months before he actually got fired, maybe even longer. I'm not sure. But then I was thinking, well, he's always attacking big pharma, particularly the vaccines. And when you look at the advertisements
Right.
on Fox News, I mean, it's like 90% Pfizer, big pharma, right? So I'm thinking, well, they're pressuring Fox to get Tucker off. And then you're right. I was thinking January 6th, because remember, he had the tapes. Remember,
right. All of them.
What's his name? The former speaker had sent him exclusively.
Exclusive. Yes, I was going to say that was an
And so,
exclusive thing.
and Fox actually censored him. They said you cannot do that. Now that was a violation of their contract with him, as Alex points out in the Inside Baseball, and that Tucker took a third of his pay from Fox so that he could produce his own content. That was a part of their contract, right? Well, the more and more he got closer and closer and closer to the truth, the more and more Fox started getting nervous about what he was producing. And babe, why don't you tell us what was the straw that broke the camel's back? I believe it has something to do with Mr. Kennedy. Did you get to that point?
I know that he interviewed Kennedy, like it was the second one, and they did sort of a deep dive into, Kennedy's his career path and things like that.
Right.
But I don't remember exactly what the book said, but Kennedy has been completely outspoken about Fauci and the vaccine. And now you're hitting Fox News right where it hurts, because Pfizer is one of the biggest, manufacturers of the vaccine
and funders of Fox.
Yeah.
And it's Jones's Inside Baseball with Tucker that produces the theory or the position that he got fired because he had RFK on and he talked about the dangers of the vaccine and he exposed it. Now, Mr. Ailes, the owner of Fox, was really good friends with Kennedy, kind of like a mentor to him, right? And he told him like a long time ago, like, this is the line. Like, you can't deal with this subject. I'm not going to go there with you. And so when Kennedy actually came on Fox to discuss the issue that Ailes said, no, we can't go there, that is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, at least as Jones's position. And it sounds,
and I like too that he talks about the whole Christian thing, where Murdoch didn't like the fact that he was talking about prayer, that he was moving into this, what he called the religious the religious talk. And actually his fiance, they had dinner at one of his place in Bel Air, and they talked about the Bible, and it really freaked him out. And Alex says, that is a possibility as well. That's the one I thought was interesting. But honestly, I think, with the litigation that Fox had going on at the time with the Dominion, or what is it?
Dominion voting systems.
The voting systems, the pressure there. Once that came out, I said, and then the RFK thing, I said, that's it. They're done. As soon as Tucker went live on X, I bought a year membership. It's like $70 a year. He has not talked about it. I think at some point he will. Maybe he writes a book. I don't know.
He's under a contract that he can't for so many years. I don't know.
Well, okay. He's still under some sort of contract with Fox.
Kind of gag order or some kind of contract.
Gotcha. That's going to be interesting, because I think once that's over, that's the first thing he's going to do.
But it's interesting. Like, he interviewed Glenn Beck, and of course I dealt with that show in detail because they talked about the failed second coming of the the New Testament apostles. But in that interview, Glenn, you can tell, knew that Tucker couldn't talk about Fox. So Glenn was able to talk about his experience at Fox when Glenn Beck was the top dog,
Right,
before Tucker,
right.
and all the stuff that he was exposing. And he talked about personal relationships with the owners of Fox and how they didn't like him talking about, well, Tucker or Beck is a Mormon, so he's not a Christian, but they
I
didn't
didn't know
like
that.
any kind of religious stuff. And Beck told everybody with Tucker there, he says, they pretty much told me there were certain things that I could not talk about.
Yeah.
And he said, but I went ahead and talked about them anyway. And of course, so they have a history of giving people the axe when they begin red pilling the public too much. And that's why we believe that Fox News is controlled opposition to some degree. Absolutely. Because they will not allow their hosts and their reporters to get to the root problems of what is really going on.
Well, and that's interesting too. He talks about how the media became these huge conglomerates owned by other corporations that were in bed with government. You know, I mean, that's the way it is now. We don't actually live in a true capitalistic economy. It's all
we have a state media, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. And he talks about that, how that evolution happened where everything's controlled. So you went from, you know, I remember the days as a kid, my dad loved 60 Minutes and growing up, and it was a good news show. And then all of a sudden you saw this, it just started going a different way. And it's like, and by then I was, you know, probably early 20s, and I was like, I can't watch this anymore. And then after Mike Wallace died, which I'm not going to say Mike Wallace was the most balanced news guy, but he was an old school news guy. At some point, he would not, you know, tote the line. And after he died, 60 Minutes just went off the rails. And then you just kind of saw everything go that way. And today you don't have that. You've got, and like I said, Fox, look, my wife watches it. They are very heavy on Trump, which I like. And Jesse Waters, I don't know if you've seen him at all. My wife loves him. He's decent. He's doing a decent job. But you're right. It's like they only go up so far, and then it's like, okay, we can't go any further than that.
Yeah. What drives me crazy, and Babe here can attest to this because I always vent my frustration with her, is that they will constantly portray the Democrats as just stupid. Mm-hmm. and coming up with these idiotic, foolish policies. Whereas I don't know if you saw my interview with Alex Newman, who is the best in the world at exposing the globalists, in my opinion. He agreed with me. He says, "Oh no, they're very intelligent." And go ahead, babe.
They're done purposefully. But it's done in such a way that it seems so incredulous to people that people tend to go, oh, that'll never work. I don't need to pay attention to that. But then it's already in place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I used to say, oh, they're just idiots, you know, and the American people are just, I can't believe they're falling into this. And then it hit me. I'm like, no, they know exactly what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They're Marxists.
Because they know how to play on the American psyche as a whole. Because look, most Americans still think they have Uncle Sam as their governor or their government.
Yeah.
You know, this whole Uncle Sam mentality. And it's like, he's not your uncle. He's a terrorist, actually.
He's actually a freaking pedophile. Which we will get to here in a little bit. Yeah, you don't want your kids hanging out with the uncle that's
no, heck no.
Government.
Yeah, believe it.
Oh man. Well, is there anything else we want to talk about on this particular chapter?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Denise.
I was just going to say, I did save something on my phone. So if you want to know just how deep the swamp goes with the news media, ABC News executive producer Ian Cameron is married to Susan Rice, Obama's former national security advisor. CBS president David Rhodes is the brother of Ben Rhodes, Obama's deputy national security advisor for strategic communications. ABC News correspondent Claire Shipman is married to Jay Carney, former Obama White House press secretary. ABC News and Univision reporter Matthew Jaffe is married to Katie Hogan, Obama's former deputy press secretary, and it goes on.
And let's not forget, before we close that and get to your comments, Mark, who runs these people? Who are the puppeteers over them?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the big bankers. It's Rothschild, Rockefellers, George Soros. They're the ones that are building this network of Marxist, compromised, assets that are the face of these networks, whereas they want to kind of be behind the scenes and not really be the public face of the network.
Yeah. No, I think it was episode 11. I said, George Soros just recently bought, what did I say, 200 radio stations or?
Yeah.
And usually if you're going to go and do that, you have to be vetted, the FCC, it takes months to do that. And I mean, he literally got through with no problem, just in time. It's ridiculous. But, it's good that you said that, Denise, because it kind of leads into one of the things that I wanted to cover around the legacy media and show some of the numbers of how it's declined in the last 20 years. But I like what Alex said. He said at the most basic level, the news you consume is a lie of the stealthiest and most insidious kind. Facts have been withheld on purpose, along with proportion and perspective, and you're being manipulated. And that came out of what Tucker had talked about before at one of his, at I think the Freedom Foundation or something. And then it leads, free speech is the main right you have. Without it, you have no others. And that is true. And I think that's why, Elon Musk saw that.
Mm-hmm.
I think he saw what social media was doing, repressing information, and he did something about it. And I love the fact that he took the money and did something that needed to be done, not just for the United States but the world. And the last thing I'll say is around that, and then I want to show some numbers just to give everybody a perspective on how that the mainstream media and this legacy media, ABC, CBS, and all of them are dying, and good riddance.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I guess I can just share my screen, right?
Yeah, you can. If you know how to do it in StreamYard.
Yeah, let's see. Share screen. There it is. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky in StreamYard. You have to. There you go. Looks like we go. There you go.
Okay, so this was actually done back in June of this year. So it's definitely gotten worse. It says the dinosaurs are dying. Let's see. Investigative journalism is disappearing. The Washington Post, CNN are cutting hundreds of jobs. Condé Nast, the owner of the New Yorker, and Vogue, and this was back in the summer, laid off 5% of its workforce. Los Angeles Times, and they already did it. That came out, I think, in July. They eliminated 20% of their employees. And Sports Illustrated pretty much declared bankruptcy. And you see all of these media outlets, especially print media, going away. Let's see if it'll jump to the. Oh no, it won't. I have to share it again. Okay, hang on. Let me grab another screen here. And then, of course, in X, we'll go there in a minute. But here, the trend away from legacy media continues. Now, this is a 20-year, over the last 20 years, but you can see it. They're dying. And in fact, I bet, now this was in 2022, I think since Elon has bought X, you probably see that's gone off a cliff since then. And there's actually a video of a woman talking about it right here. And I'm not going to play the whole thing, but we'll.
Donald Trump in 2020. Okay. It was a great big awakening for me in the last 4 years, and it's a loss to the Democratic Party. They don't realize that just because you voted in the past means you're going to be loyal in the future. Mm-hmm. Your actions do actually matter.
Yeah, I think people see it a lot easier now because we've had Trump before and we've had Kamala Harris and Biden.
The Joe Biden was a catastrophic error.
Yeah.
But this is a Democrat.
Independent people like yourself started, and I was like, well, wait a minute, I need to research this.
So you'd say that social media and independent journalism is helping?
Oh, 1,000%. Just so you know.
So right there.
I didn't vote for Donald Trump in 2016.
So right there shows you that people, they've given up on legacy media. They're just done.
In the last show we showed that clip of the Black community getting red pilled and kind of coming over into the Republican Party. And a lot of that has to do with social media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. People
like Candace Owen, right? Who is a student of the guy that you like so much.
Thomas Sowell. She started out reading Thomas Sowell.
Oh, I didn't know that, man. I love that guy too.
Yeah.
Wow. I've always liked Candace Owen. I don't know if anybody's seen her documentary on the BLM. Oh man, it was great.
Yeah, she really exposed the frauds and Marxists that they are.
Oh yeah, she did a great job.
And she just recently did an interview with Alex Jones because she did quite the deep dive into Kamala Harris's heritage and background and exposes the lies that Kamala Harris is not African American. She's not Black at all.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it is highly suspect, and I think almost certain that her mother was part of the MK Ultra CIA machine.
Oh, okay.
Well, her mother was, in fact, a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, well, how much of this does she just, how do you leave your work when you come home? When you're a part of this group that is training chimpanzees and manipulating chimpanzees, doing these studies on these animals to show how you can control people, and then you come home to your daughter, right? How do you leave your work and not bring it up?
Yeah,
and she gives a convincing case. And Alex Jones chipped in, and the guy just has a wealth of knowledge in this area. I mean, he was piggybacking off of everything she said and supporting it and showing how these families do bring in their family into these organizations, and they use them and manipulate them. And he says that program understood a long time ago that to truly manipulate and control people, you have to get them when they're children.
Mm-hmm.
And it's his position and Owen's position that Harris was brought into the system as a child, and she is very much controlled, which makes sense because everyone's scratching their head like, how did she get to be to this position when no one voted for her? And she is selected. She is not.
There's a great interview Tucker does on his show. Interviewed one of the main lawyers, and it was a woman in San Francisco that was also going up at the same time she was as a lawyer, and she talks about how she moved in those positions. And it's a great interview. It's on Tucker. I'll before the show I'll get the name of that. But it shows you that as mainstream media is dying because they've left the idea of what journalism is about. You're seeing now these independent journalisms come up and use social media to expose these things. And I think James O'Keefe is one of the best ever. And I am so glad when they fired him from the one he started, his own organization. It's just like Tucker. He's just exploded. And I think And that's where we're headed. And it's great. It is the internet. It's what I've always wanted, the internet revolution, that where information becomes so cheap that that no one, everything is exposed, especially from governments, big corporations, things like that. And don't get me wrong, I'm a capitalist, but we don't live in a capitalistic society. Those big corporations are not big on their own. There's only a few. In fact, I would only say Apple being maybe the one that kind of got there on their own. But if you see it any other, but I'm sure if you dig into Apple, there's probably a lot of governmental skeletons in that closet as well. So none of these corporations get that big on their own. And so that, anybody blames capitalism shouldn't.
Exactly. Is there anything else you have to say about the media that you wanted to bring up?
No, that's it. Other than at the end, I'm going to I'm going to show some real numbers on the election so people can get the real numbers and get excited, because it's not what these polls are coming out and they're saying. So.
No, it's not.
Well, let me give a smooth transition here from this to what you just brought up and Denise just brought up. Let's talk about the red pilling of Elon Musk. Okay, because obviously this was before or after he wrote the book, but the red pilling of Elon Musk and our children and what they're doing to our children, which will segue in what we're talking about now, is that the globalists got a hold of one of his sons. I can't remember how old he is. And they're trying to transition one of his sons into being a girl. This highly pissed off Elon Musk. And this is the main reason why he is anti-globalist, anti-transhumanism, anti-global elite World Economic Forum. This is what started his journey, okay, to support free speech, uphold and defend the First Amendment, and taking over X. Okay. Now, we're going to show you some clips, and I know this is a troubling subject, but it's something we really need to know, because the government wants your children, and they want them very young. They want to depopulate us, or if we have children, they want to be in control of educating them and controlling them. All right. And, we talked about Harris and the whole mind control thing and how they take over kids when they're young. And that's when they're influential, and that's when they can do the most damage. And a lot of the damage that they can do is through sexual rape and molestation of children. Unfortunately, that is when they're most vulnerable, and that is when they really, really turn them. So let's take a look at, is this the first one right here?
Yes.
Okay. These are some videos, my love.
The states are taking children, giving them to somebody else for money that they get from the federal government. That means that all 50 states are involved in government subsidized child trafficking. It's a ring. It is the largest and most pervasive child trafficking ring in the history of the world by sheer money and numbers.
Children are seized unnecessarily from their families due to the federal aid entitled the Adoption and Safe Families Act.
It was put into law in 1997 by Bill and Hillary Clinton, and I said it that way on purpose. And it is a law that literally steals money from the Social Security Fund and gives this money to the states in order to incentivize them to kidnap babies.
To receive the adoption incentives or bonuses, local CPS must have more children. They must have more merchandise to sell.
Every child, once you've added it all up, is worth approximately $1 million to the state. But we've been told that this is a $60 to $80 billion a year industry, meaning the federal government is taking $80 billion a year and giving that money to all of the 50 states to kidnap children.
Parents are victimized by the system that makes a profit for holding children longer and bonuses for not returning children to their parents.
But their own statistics state that 83% of all children who are taken by CPS, Child Protective Services, are for unsubstantiated allegations, meaning never should it have happened in the first place. So imagine anything else in the world where you know you get it wrong 83% of the time and you admit it, but you just keep doing it.
Case workers and social workers are often guilty of fraud. They withhold and destroy evidence.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, well, 83%. That's
huge.
I mean, government. I don't think the government's ever got anything correct. So, you know.
Yes. Now, this next one, baby, you want to cue this up for us?
Well, the woman that we just watched, she was a senator.
State Senator.
She was a senator, and she did quite an investigation in the state of Georgia, which I have the PDF on my phone. The investigation that she did. She was found murdered after she presented her evidence.
Exposed these people. Let's see what's going on here.
Nancy Schaefer and her husband Bruce were found dead today.
I'm convinced without a shadow of a doubt that the parents across this country need to be warned of the dangers of the Child Protective Services nationwide.
Tonight, GBI crime scene investigators are at her Northeast Georgia home.
The Department of Child Protective Services has become a protected empire.
They're searching for clues that might tell them
it's built on taking children and separating families.
What led to the sudden and violent deaths of Miss Schaefer and her husband.
The family is going to have to be destroyed in order for the one world government to completely develop.
One world government.
Children are being taken away from their parents in a ruthless kind of behavior. How do you tame Child Protective Services? It may be only by closing it completely and starting over at the beginning with pro-family values.
Former State Senator Nancy Schaefer and her husband Bruce were found.
You know, there's for all the
states are taking children, giving them to somebody else for money that they get from the federal government.
For all the rock and roll folks out there, for people that remember Soundgarden, the lead singer actually, you know, he committed suicide is what but you know, before he did that, he was spending a lot of his money and had investigators looking at child trafficking.
Yes.
Now, yeah, I haven't dug into that, but it was interesting that, you know, he was doing all this on the side, and then he was found he hung himself or something in Paris where he lived. And there's some other folks, I think, some celebrities.
I think
heard
the most recent one would be Aaron Carter. He was part of a boy band, and where his brother was, and he was also had undergone and experienced molestation in the Hollywood and music industry business, and he was going to expose and blow the whistle. And
the whole Diddy thing that's coming. I mean, man, that he's got to have dirt on tons of celebrities. I mean, you look at J-Lo that just came out.
Politicians, everybody. It's not just celebrities.
I don't know if he's going to survive either. I don't think he's going to make it to trial.
Mark, in any business industry, if you have an 83% of absolute failure, do you keep your job?
No.
Do you? So let me get this right. With our taxpayer money, they're taking our money, just like BlackRock takes our money to use it against us. They're taking our money, our taxpayer money, and trying to steal our children. And Lord knows what takes place once they get them. I mean, statistically, we know once they're taken from their parents, they're usually transitioned or molested or raped.
Yeah.
And it's so sad, but this is what they do. In the first video, they talked about meeting quotas and how they get bonuses, right? if they keep the child longer than they're supposed to, it reminds me of big pharma, and their control over many of the doctors and the conflict of interest there. And even the three-letter agencies, the FBI, CIA, and how they're always trying to justify more funding by creating the illusion that they need the money, like FBI, like they're infiltrating organizations claiming that they're domestic terrorists so that we will fund them. Like they create the problems so that we will fund them, and then they use our money against us.
So let me ask a question. Do you think that when this originally came about, the bill that Clinton signed, that it came from a good place, but typical of what government does is it totally distorted everything? And then, of course, because government is the epitome of evil in especially the bigger it gets, and that it comes from a good place and then just totally gets distorted.
Now, when you look at the history of the Clintons,
they
were running drug trafficking even as a governor.
Mm-hmm.
And what comes with drug trafficking is always sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And there are all kinds of
power.
There's all kinds of reports of Hillary, especially. And of course, we know how many times Bill Clinton was on the what's that plane of what's his name?
Epstein.
Epstein. Yeah. So they've been at this for a long time.
I think Bill Gates still holds the record, I believe. So.
Yeah.
Well, how many of Clinton's close associates have, quote, suicided themselves? I mean, give me a break.
Right.
No.
Right.
And the whole Clinton Foundation and the money that they funneled after
Haiti,
all
the kids
and
that
the
they stole
earthquake in Haiti, and the
That's
children.
True. You're right. I'd forgotten about that. Yep.
But we show those two videos to set the stage for the next part, which is sort of an update on what's going on in Western North Carolina with the hurricane victims.
Let's see if I can get this.
You wouldn't think that it could get any freaking worse for the people in Western North Carolina, but guess what? The government said, hold my beer. So I was tagged in those videos yesterday where they were talking about DCS coming in and threatening to take these children from their parents because they don't have adequate housing. So I had to do my due diligence because I don't want to spread misinformation. So I got a hold of my family and I got a hold of friends that live in that area, in Yancey, in Spruce Pine, up in Burnsville. And I asked them, I said, please, for the love of God, tell me that this is not true. It's freaking true. So I'll give you one instance that I know of that my friend saw with her own eyes. It's a small trailer park, okay, in Spruce Pine. Looks like it did day one all this happened. Nothing's been done. Nobody's been there to help these people clean up, okay? My friend and her community are doing everything they possibly freaking can to help these people. So she tells me that FEMA and Red Cross pull out of the area, right? Which is fine, they weren't doing anything anyways. They were just taking up space. But as soon as they pull out, DCS comes in and starts evaluating these parents. It starts telling these parents, if you don't get adequate housing, we're going to have to take your kids into state custody. DCS, explain to me how this is going to happen. Explain to me. Because every time we try to bring a tiny home, an RV, something for these people to live in, they get stopped. They're trying to make them have certain requirements. They're trying to give them restrictions. They're trying to make them get permits. Like, what in the hell? And then on top of that, explain, do you understand that ground, that land is saturated, it's unstable. So you're very limited on where you can put, if we get anything for these people to live in, where are we going to put it? So between the restrictions, the requirements, the permits, and then the freaking land not being stable, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah, that is the epitome of government right there.
Yes.
You put so many laws and restrictions and ordinances in place that you basically can't do anything.
You wouldn't think that it could get any freaking worse for the people in Western.
That is the epitome of government right there, is that they know. So one arm of the government comes in and says, okay, if you don't get this under control, by law, we can take your children. And then, but people that are trying to help, because FEMA's not going to do anything.
Right.
Well, you don't have the permits, you don't have this, you don't have that. And it's just, so you have gridlock in trying to save people. And this is, and I love to see this woman. And this is why America is seeing through the United States government is not going to save you. It never could, and it can't, and it never will. And Arizona and all of these states, Wisconsin, and even Michigan to a certain extent, these states are seeing that, you know what, we put these people in power and look what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to stop our elections in Colorado. Oh man, and I only reason I didn't show it tonight is because I couldn't find the news source. But if it's true, all of the swing states, illegal immigration in all of them, some of them are up 500, 600, 700%, but all of them on average are up 400%.
Mm-hmm.
And your average American's like, I don't know what's going on, but they're slowly, because of what you see there, they're learning. They're seeing that the government's not here to save me.
No.
Oh no, the government is there to control you. We have abdicated our responsibility.
Absolutely.
For so many years, and we thought that these people in these higher places that we placed in these higher places were just going to magnanimously do things for the betterment of the people that put them there, and absolutely not. I mean, human nature is human nature is human nature.
Yep.
You get power, you get control, you get money. All you want is more.
Absolutely.
Yep, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amen. Do we want to show one more? Do we have time for one more, or is that good? Or
I have one more video that I pulled out just because it confirms what we just heard. And she makes the same point. We don't have to show it. She makes the same point. How can you build a house in 4 weeks? The Red Cross is pulling out. The Red Cross has said, we're done. Well, how can you be done? How can you rebuild houses in 4 weeks? How can we get permits? What is the point of a permit? You're letting these people stay tents, in their front yards. What is the difference between a tent and a tiny house or an RV that we can bring in? But they're hitting roadblock after roadblock with these permits. And she's just as frustrated because she is working with an organization trying to bring in these tiny homes, and she confirms, yes, they are going in. The shelters, the Red Cross is saying, we're closing up shop. You've got a day, figure it out, because if you don't, Child Protective Services is going to be coming in and trying to take your children or threatening to take your children.
Mark, doesn't the ultimate red pill, the ultimate awakening for any person or any society is when you start attacking your children? This was the beginning of the awakening for Elon Musk.
Yep.
This is the beginning of the awakening all around our country when Biden and Harris showed their Marxist agenda.
Yep.
And called bear moms and school boards domestic terrorists because they wanted the state to stop pushing pedophilia in the schools. And I think this is really the beginning, because see, before Mark, everyone kind of had a concept. Yeah, we understand Marxist communism wants to take over our educational system and dumb us down. Yeah. And we kind of were just lazy and we just kind of let it happen, right? But when they start trying to transition your children, like in California, where it's a law that a teacher can transition your child without your permission or without you knowing it, And if you have a problem with it and you find out, they can take your child away and make some money off of them, just as we showed. So I think that this is really kind of the beginning stage for a lot of people of just understanding how evil and wicked the depraved heart is. And the globalists are showing their hand in a big way. I think they're overplaying it. And I think it's, Lord willing, going to backfire on them.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what I was going to say. Is they have absolutely overplayed their hand, like they always do, and we're seeing a transition. In fact, I think it was there was a great quote. Oh man, where was it? I thought maybe Alex said it, but anyway, I'll try to find it. I'll share next time about this transition of where. That's exactly what we're seeing. People are waking up, and it took the transitioning of your kids, or it took the FBI coming to your school board meetings to tell you how to raise your kids, or what you can and can't do with your children.
I remember during one of our family Bible studies when we were still in North Carolina, and we were talking about the slippery slope of having allowed homosexuals to marry and then adopt children. And I said, the next step is going to be normalizing pedophilia
and then bestiality.
And normalizing bestiality. Those will be the next steps. And sure enough, we are no longer supposed to use the word pedophilia. It's minor attracted persons. And they are reducing and lowering the age, especially in the state of California, the age of consent. It is becoming normalized. And I was, the kids are like, oh, you're crazy. That'll never happen. I mean, I was so scoffed at, but it's true. It's 100% true. And then we see that our government behind our back has been using services that we have always thought has been there for the betterment of society to take children and actually traffic children. And it's not just for the purpose of raping. I mean, there are dark, dark places on the web where torture and sadism is a huge business.
Oh, yeah.
Our children are being sacrificed to that. It is huge. And then you see places like Western North Carolina and Georgia and Eastern Tennessee, where they're coming in and taking children away because the government has not given these people time to even begin to recover. And then you start piecing that together with the missing children in Lahaina, in Hawaii, after the wildfires that weren't wild, they were caused by direct energy weapons. And you start going, oh, it's not just a land grab. It's a grab for our children as well.
Right.
And
that Maui thing is an interesting thing to dive into.
Don't hear much about it anymore, do you?
No, but there were people on the island that understood what was coming, and they painted their roofs blue. And if you look, they're the only homes that did not get destroyed,
that were not
eradicated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then we have that video of Biden where he's like, yeah, those roofs were blue. We've got to fix that. It's like,
oh, I hadn't heard that.
and speaking of Biden and how corrupt he is, when we talk about the open borders, this isn't, again, people, this is not stupidity of the Democrat Party at this point. No. They're committing treason with the World Economic Forum and this globalist death cult. All right. They're leaving the border open to destroy us from within. Yeah. And it's not just bringing in poor people to destroy us monetarily and overwhelm the healthcare system and the education system and the terrorists from China and everywhere else, but it is child trafficking. It is. We have over 300,000. It's much more than that. Guaranteed. At least 300,000 children are missing, completely missing. The border people are beside themselves because they're forced in a position to actually facilitate the child trafficking.
Their suicide rate has gone through the roof.
Dang.
because of the moral injury that is caused by being put in this position. It is insane. And I remember the mainstream media crucifying Trump for 500 misplaced children that the Trump administration couldn't account for, and silence on the 300,000 plus missing in the Biden administration.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's really sad, and unfortunately, children are the biggest wake up call, but it unfortunately is the biggest sacrifice.
Amen.
And hopefully we will stand up to at least defend the children. We sure don't defend the unborn in this country.
Right.
So, maybe they reasoned, well, hey, America doesn't care. They're all about money and selfishness and killing babies anyway. So let's see if we
can. When you don't have children and you're, in your late 20s, 30s, and I'm not saying everybody, but I know, like, for me, when I was, I couldn't relate to that because I didn't have children. But I understood the word, and I knew that, you can't just say that abortion, I mean, because there's Christians out there that somehow think that abortion's okay because it's unborn. And then at the same time, they just don't see the connection of that it's life. It's like it's not life. It's okay. I don't even know how they compartmentalize it. I know when I was younger, I didn't understand kids, and I was like, I said I never wanted kids, and here I am. But I always understood at some level that abortion was not right, from the sense of it's still life. And I've met some people that call themselves Christians, and they don't equate that, and I don't understand why.
Right. It's a woman's body. So there's a simple argument that you can make, and you just lead someone down a very logical path. Okay. When someone has an organ transplant, liver, heart, lungs, whatever it may be, kidneys, whatever it may be, they're given medication because it's different DNA, right? The body of the person who has that organ transplanted into them is going to reject it because it's DNA that the body is unfamiliar with. So you have to give the medication so the body does not reject the organ. If you look up, and you can do this, anybody listening can do it right now. You can look up and you can Google amniotic fluid embolus. It's rare. It doesn't happen very often, but there are times when a woman who is in labor has a breach of the placenta where a lot of the fetal cells go into the mother's system, and it causes a systemic allergic reaction, like the very same allergic reaction a body has to an organ that is not theirs, because the DNA is completely different. That is not the mom's body. That is completely different DNA. Period. End of discussion, which makes it a completely different, separate life.
Right. That's a good point.
And I think at this point, we in the church, when we have a child, like with our daughter or with my older daughters, our older daughters, and I wish I had done this earlier, think about the idea of being raped and possibility of conception through rape. We need to start saying the rape, that insult on your body, that taking away of your personal sovereignty is horrible. But look, God has given this life as something good to come out of it, and we have got to start changing the narrative. We have to.
Yeah.
That's the only way that we're going to stop this normalization of, well, if it's rape or incest or, the mother's life, then it's okay. It's not okay. God is sovereign over all things. He's sovereign over all life. It is not okay. It's not.
But because they know there are a lot of non-Christians that are still against abortion, they will use these outliers, the small percentage of rape and incest or the health of the mother, this really tiny, small little percentage. and they'll blow it up. And so the people that don't have a moral compass, that understand God's sovereignty and scripture, they're like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, and they kind of fall for it. And it's really sad. But our children are obviously being attacked. They're trying to depopulate you by abortions. And then they're trying to get a hold of your children through schools. They're trying to transition them. So if they can't depopulate us by killing the unborn, or killing us through our food, poisoning our water, or big pharma, then they try and educate them with Marxism and transition them and keep you out of the loop. And this is really unfortunate, because if they can sexually abuse your kids, they know psychologically that they are able to control that person for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you have to stand up for the kids, not just your kids, but the kids of this country and the world.
Yep. Amen.
All right, guys. Closing comments. What did you got, Mark?
Yeah. So I want to just share some
yes,
poll numbers as of I think this was about 8 hours ago. Elon posted 7 hours. So now, as I said last time, Polymark is the betting site that people around the world bet on elections, and they have gotten it right, I think, the last 12 years. And in fact, some whale went in with $2 million on Trump. But anyway, this is the true percentage of what's going on in the election. And actually, Trump posted this. Now, this was, this has been out for about a day.
Yeah.
So the swing states too. So all the polls you're seeing on ABC, CBS, even Fox, I saw a poll that just does not mirror reality. So I wanted everybody to know that, look, this is going to happen. I believe this is ordained by God. And you can't change it. Just too many things have happened in this election that shows to me that he's going to win. I guess I'm kind of on David Curtis's side. When he said there's just no way that you remember the last time he was just convinced that Trump was going to win. Well, I guess I'm this way, but it's just this election. There's been too many miracles that have happened that I think it's ordained this is going to happen. And it's great. Elon posted a thing about Ron Paul possibly being on his DOGE committee, which got a lot of folks in the libertarian camps excited.
Yeah.
Still a lot of millions of people out there love Ron Paul. Hopefully it'll get him off the couch come Tuesday. And hopefully a week from today.
How old is Ron Paul?
He is 1 year older than my father, and my father in October turned 87, so he's got to be 88 years old.
Wow. Okay.
Hopefully, I don't say hopefully, we're going to have a whole different conversation a week from today.
That is the prayer. That is what we are hoping for.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. Let's hope and pray.
And I trend more on the David Curtis side of things. However, there is a part of me that is still reserved, because we discussed before we started all of the ways that they're trying to cheat. That the good thing is, however, it's very publicly obvious, know, and people are reporting it. They're reporting it to those who can actually do something about it. And the RNC, surprise of all surprises, has actually brought forth lawsuits that we have won in this election cycle. So,
and what we learned from the last election cycle is, once it's certified, you have no legal standing, and no judge wants to try. It doesn't matter how much evidence you have of the cheating. They don't want to mess with it.
Yeah.
Right.
So what we've learned is, okay, now we bring the lawsuits even before the election. Once we catch the fraud, that way the evidence is admissible and you can do something about it. At least that's what I'm hearing. And let's hope that takes place. Let's hope that we don't even need to go there. Let's hope that it's so big to rig, you know?
Right.
Right.
That's where I'm at. But yeah, here, let me share this real quick. This is exactly what we're up against here. So
That's true. Trump is running against the deep state. He's running against the globalists.
yep.
Yeah. And that's a big mountain to overcome, and only God can do that.
And I don't think Trump is controlled opposition. I know I've got a lot of friends that think that. I just think he's very ignorant on Zionism, and he may be a little bit smarter than he lets. Because if you do understand the Rothschilds and you do understand the dangers of Zionism, you're sure not going to publicly say anything about it. And let's hope that is the case. And if not, I'm really good at judging people's character. I honestly think Trump loves this country. I really just think that the whole Talmudic Rothschild Zionism thing is just a blind spot for him. But the more him and his team, like JD Vance has been talking to Alex Jones.
Right.
And they're putting Alex Jones in the loop to expose the globalist networks. So there's no way you can study globalism and not see that the Rothschilds are the top of the food chain of this. So at some point, Trump is going to have to make that connection between what evangelical Zionism is teaching and all of his Jewish, Talmudic Zionists, and say, yeah, maybe I need to stop listening to these people and just kind of go where the facts lead me. And that's what we really need to pray for and hope for.
Yep. Amen on that.
Yeah.
And we had actually quite a few people in the chat. So thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Mike.
All right.
All right, brother.
We will talk.
Hopefully we'll have a really good show.
We will have a really good show.
That's what we're hoping.
All right, brother.
See you guys.
Always good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yep.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in.